What happens to your internal monologue after 30 days of total silence? You might imagine it as a peaceful retreat, a mental spa day where the chatter of the world finally fades away and you find inner peace. You think you'll finally hear your own thoughts clearly, like a crisp radio signal in a quiet room. But your brain wasn't designed for peace. It was designed for survival. And in the world of neuroscience, silence isn't a gift. It's a starvation diet. By day 30, that inner voice you've known your whole life won't just be different. It might be trying to kill you. Day 1 to day 3, the deceptive calm. The first 24 hours are actually pleasant. Imagine you've checked into a soundproofed room or a remote cabin. No phone, no TV, no talking to the dog. Initially, your brain does something called consolidation. Without the constant input bias of scrolling through TikTok or hearing a coworker complain about their lunch, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex planning, finally catches up on its chores. You feel insightful. You start thinking about that project you never finished or a conversation from 3 years ago. Your internal monologue is articulate, calm, and linear. It's like your mind is a messy desk that you're finally organizing into neat little folders. If you've ever wondered why the first day of a silent retreat feels so life-changing, it's because your brain is enjoying the lack of neural noise. Like this video if you've ever craved just 1 hour of total silence. But by day 3, the honeymoon is over. The brain is a biological machine that runs on contrast. It needs delta, the difference between sounds, to stay calibrated. When you remove external speech, your brain starts to turn up the gain on its internal speakers. Every tiny thought, every "did I lock the door?" or "I'm hungry" starts to sound louder. Not figuratively, but neurologically. The auditory cortex, bored and hungry for stimulation, starts looking for something, anything to process. Week 1, the echo chamber. By day 7, the input bias shift is in full swing. To understand what happens next, I spent hours digging through journals on sensory deprivation and the diaries of solo circumnavigators who spent months at sea. There is a common thread. When the outside world goes quiet, the inside world gets crowded. Your internal monologue is no longer a tool you use. It's a roommate you can't kick out. Because you aren't narrating your life to anyone else, your brain stops filtering the garbage. Normally, your brain discards about 90% of your random, intrusive thoughts before you even realize you had them. But in total silence, your brain treats every thought as a breaking news bulletin. You start to experience earworms on a terrifying scale. That one annoying jingle from a commercial you heard in 2012, it's now playing on a loop in high definition. Your internal monologue begins to fracture. You aren't just thinking, "I should eat." You're having a 3-way debate with yourself about the ethics of eating a cracker. Your brain is essentially running hot, burning through glucose as it tries to manufacture the stimulation it's missing. Week 2 to week 3, the auditory glitch. This is the turning point. By day 14, the physiological structure of your thoughts begins to warp. In a normal environment, your brain uses a process called efference copy. When you speak or even think a word, your brain sends a tiny signal to your auditory cortex saying, "Hey, I'm about to say this, so don't be surprised." This is why you can't tickle yourself. Your brain knows it's coming. But after 2 weeks of silence, the efference copy system starts to glitch. The boundary between a thought and a sound begins to blur. You might be sitting in the silence and suddenly hear your name called out clearly. You spin around, but there's no one there. This isn't madness in the traditional sense. It's your brain's thalamus, the relay station for sensory info, misfiring. It's so desperate for input that it's taking random neural firing and interpreting it as external noise. Your internal monologue is no longer a silent stream of consciousness. It's starting to gain texture. You might start talking to yourself out loud just to hear a human voice, but even that feels wrong. Your own voice sounds like a stranger's. It's heavy, alien, and uncomfortably loud. You are now entering the crash phase. The crash, day 20 to day 30. By day 25, you are hitting the psychological breaking point. Imagine your mind is a Ferrari idling in a garage. Without the road, the outside world, to drive on, the engine is just vibrating until the bolts start to shake loose. The most horrific part of this journey is the loss of the narrative self. Your internal monologue is the thread that sews your yesterday self to your today self. In total silence, that thread unravels. You start to lose track of time. Without conversation to mark the passing of hours, no good morning, no what's for dinner, the brain's internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, loses its rhythm. By day 28, the inner voice can become persecutory. This is a phenomenon documented in prisoners kept in solitary confinement. The brain, unable to find a hero to talk to, creates a villain. You start obsessing over your worst failures. The monologue becomes a judge, jury, and executioner, replaying your greatest shames with visceral 4K clarity. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, is stuck in a permanent on position. You are physically sitting in a quiet room, but neurologically, you are in a war zone. Your brain is now performing neural pruning in reverse. It is trying to rewire itself to handle the new normal of nothingness. Some people report that their thoughts stop being words and start becoming shapes or colors. You are losing the ability to think in language because language is a social tool and your brain has decided that society no longer exists. Before we see if your mind can ever truly recover from day 30, hit subscribe to keep your own neural pathways firing. The aftermath. Breaking the silence. On day 31, you finally speak. You walk out of the room and try to say hello. But the hello doesn't come out right. Your vocal cords are stiff, sure, but the real issue is your Broca's area, the speech production center of the brain. It's sluggish. There is a lag between your thought and your words that feels like a bad internet connection. The recovery isn't instant. For days or even weeks, the world will feel too much. A car door slamming will feel like a physical blow to your chest. A simple conversation will be exhausting, as if you're trying to solve complex math equations while running a marathon. The permanent damage, however, is often found in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and navigation. Studies on people who spend prolonged time in isolation show that the hippocampus actually shrinks. Your world becomes smaller, literally and figuratively. You might find it harder to remember directions or learn new tasks for months after the experiment ends. The human mind is a laboratory, but it's one that requires a constant supply of external chemicals, specifically the chemicals of sound, social interaction, and environmental change. We like to think of our internal monologue as our soul, something deep and untouchable, but the reality is much more fragile. Your self is a symphony that requires an audience to stay in tune. Without that audience, the music doesn't just stop, the instruments start to break. If you are forced into 30 days of total silence, what is the one song or voice you think your brain would loop until you went haywire? Let me know in the comments. It might be the only thing that keeps your internal monologue from turning on you.